during which we are going to demonstrate how to basically fill, construct, and plant and finish a hypertufa trough. Of course, it doesn't have to be in hypertufa. These are we're starting with hypertufa here, which is of course a mixture of peat, perlite, and mortar mix. So it looks like concrete, but it's like half the weight. So the first thing we need to do is cover these holes, and we're going to do that with this is where you come in, Jay. We're going to do that with these little meshes, just to be sure that they don't get plugged up. Great, and now we're gonna fill it up. So, as you can see on these troughs behind me, we're gonna fill them not just flat, but as high as we can to get started. That's the way I like to do it, because you see a lot of troughs when they're finished that are just flat, right? Like a flat plane with the plants kind of growing in them. But we're trying to create something that's a lot more dramatic looking here. The real inspiration for rock gardening comes from the mountains, and what we're really trying to do is build like a real craggy, dramatic, not kind of boring and flat kind of construction. So the first thing we're going to do is going to fill it up. Climate like Vancouver's, where it rains a lot, pure sand is a perfectly fine growing medium, because particularly if you're growing saxatile plants, they really don't want a lot of nutrients in the soil. They really get what they need more from the mineral components of the soil, not the organic component. And so literally you start by just chucking your first rock on. The first rock is always the hardest one, actually, especially in a big garden. And in a really big garden, you have to have in your mind already the basic outflow, or the basic design of how it's going to look. You can't just start winging it, right? Like here you can almost start just winging it. You just throw the rocks on. Like sometimes when I'm unloading the rocks from the truck and I just put them on the ground like this next to each other, it's like, we're done. It looks good when you don't even think about, as long as you line them up, it looks good, right? So let's see. What we got here now is a very symmetrical pile where the center's in the middle. Definitely don't want that, because this concept in design, asymmetrical balance, where you've got, how can I explain it? Think about Mount Fuji, right? It's like a perfect, it's called a composite volcano. It's too symmetrical, right? Think about a bonsai tray, a rectangular bonsai tray. You never put the plant in the middle, right? You put it a third, like a third of the way over. So that I try to go with that rule of thirds. So I usually like to have my high point somewhere a third of the way, right? And you see that garden, it's the same. It's like your high point is pushed a bit towards one side, right? That's what it looks like for me. And so it just creates a slightly different kind of sense of, it's more natural that way. It looks less human, right? So you definitely want to create something that has a high side and a low side. And then you also don't want to bury all your rocks so that you can't see these nice slabby faces, right? So you think about it, if this was a flat crevice garden with no relief, every single rock would be buried right into the ground, and you wouldn't see the sides of any rocks. And this is one of the great reasons for building it up high, so that when you put one of your first rocks in, it essentially becomes a retaining stone that retains this next level here, right? So you've got this beautiful face that's always going to be exposed. Doesn't matter where you start. You can do your edges. You can do the top first. You can kind of do whatever you want in terms of how the rocks go. But the important thing is that between each rock you have about a 1-inch crevice, and that's of course a question a lot of people ask: how wide should the crevices be, right? 1 inch is about a good average, basically, because it allows you to pot. If you're potting a 2-inch plant like this, it's easy enough to plant it, right? Anything wider than 1 inch, and it's starting to turn in not as much of a crevice. It's turning more into a planting pocket then, right? So 1 inch is about the average. You can certainly go 1 centimeter for sure. Different alpines like different things. You just kind of have to get to know what likes what. Telesonic's Jamesy eye, everyone complains it never flowers. Well, I feel like you gotta get a bit like that, less than a centimeter crevice, and that stresses it out. And like I have that plant and it flowers great every year, but I literally squished the roots between crevices, which is how it grows in nature, right? So 1 inch wide. The next thing to talk about is what we call the returns, which is basically where the rock comes down to the edge of the trough, right? And we want it to look natural, like it's all part of a piece of bedrock that exists, that keeps going down, down, down below the ground, right? So you wouldn't take this rock, and like I said, this is art. So when I say you wouldn't, I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just most people would think that it doesn't look as good. So I wouldn't take that rock necessarily and put it like that, because you get this kind of funny looking overhang here. Now, again, that's not to say that you couldn't grow something that wants an overhang right here, right? Like if you plant something right there and this is south facing, you could create quite a nice planting pocket for something that wants to be a little bit drier in the winter there, right? So again, there's nothing wrong with doing this, but I personally like the returns to really look like they kind of return right down into the ground below. So in that case, I would turn this over, and then you see how it just kind of disappears in there, kind of giving you this feeling like it keeps on going. Of course, in a trough, it's pretty obvious it doesn't keep going, but in the ground, you can really create this look where people will say, "Oh, you have a piece of natural bedrock in your backyard," and then you can say, "No, that's the ultimate compliment because I actually built this," right? So, but this rock won't work because you also got this funny thing here, right? So I was telling you it's easy. This is how easy it is. I'm just gonna randomly throw a bunch of rocks in here so you can see, well, this is actually pretty good returns here and then back to there. This might actually work. So I lose a lot of soil off here. There's gonna be a lot of soil falling in. So I think that. So there's kind of my low little meadowy area. I'm not gonna build that up much higher because I want to keep this face, right? So there's rock number 1, and this is where I'm gonna say this is how easy this is. So this will go. See, I don't like this 90-degree thing here. So it could maybe be, this one's actually got a lot of 90 degrees. So mimicking your angles. See this here? I can work with that, with this. See this angle here? This angle here? This here I'm actually gonna hide, but I'll show you how I'm gonna do that. So, this guy. I'm gonna dig that in a bit. The nice things about small troughs like this is that if you don't like it, you can just take them out and do it again. So, now some people like the idea of a rock hanging over the edge of the trough, kind of like this. And it looks a bit funny at first, but it actually really, once the plants kind of grow all around this little edge here, and it actually looks way more natural. So I might overhang that a bit. I think that's acceptable. You got a little bit of a thing here, but because this is a trough and not in the ground, I'm not going to worry about that too much. Because plus, you can always hide something like this by planting something there that'll just totally fill that little space. So I think now our high point is probably going to be about here. So like I said, it's not in the middle, just back a bit, and I'm going to angle them back ever so slightly, just a bit. Because they can be heaved into all different angles, right? I think they often look good if they have just an ever so slight kind of a tilt to them. Here, I can put these rocks right up against this return match is better. I can put this rock like that. So there's our 1 inch crevice here, right? Or sometimes if you don't have little rocks to put in between here to stop soil from sloughing out, you can either put it right up against it and then have your crevices more kind of back here. But what I prefer to do is leave a big enough space that I can then find a smaller rock like this, which will then go in like this. And once you kind of put that in a bit, fill that in. And that stops the soil when you water from sloughing out, right? So I haven't checked my angles here. That's actually not too bad. See, they all kind of come down. They don't all match exactly, but that's okay. Right? So I've got my little bit of a space to fill in there, so I'll put that in. These guys, we actually have two different kinds of rock here. This is a Juan Slate, which theoretically shouldn't necessarily be mixing, but it is the same color. Do you think that looks bad? I'm the purist, I know, but like I say, once all this kind of, I think that's acceptable. So I'm going to pound that in so it looks like it's all part of the rock, slowly stepping up as we go. This one might be too big. This one's a bit too big, so let's find one that, I'm going to find a little piece that fits in there. And this one, the whole rock's going to be buried. Almost all cut. There we go. So now you've got planting pockets in here. I'll put some more little rocks in there. Got planting pockets all around here. Okay. So now I'm going to put something that's a bit bigger here. Okay, like I said, I do want to save the face, but it's not the end of the world if I bring it up and then we see another face here. So that matches that quite nicely, right? Same with that one there. I'm going to find another piece of this stuff. Sometimes if you don't have a wide enough piece, just put two pieces in, and then you can rock hammer. So that's one of the big questions a lot of people ask is, when you have such a steep vertical crevice, how do you stop the soil from sloughing out of it when you water, right? And so this is one way, like that. You can also take some like marine clay, right? Like make a little clay puck, kind of shove it in there, and then pound your rocks into that clay. That holds it forever. Like I did crevices like that 15 years ago, and they're still holding just fine. Sometimes you can take a handful of like coarser gravel, like the kind of like 1 inch gravel, and put it in behind, and that can help plug it, basically, because this stuff does. But you will find that at the beginning there's a bit of settling and a little bit of washing out. But as the plants kind of get their roots in there, it's amazing how that kind of stops happening, right? So working our way along here. That I don't want to bury this face. It's going to be the same height as these guys, basically. I wonder if that should come up. Now, when you're under the gun and everyone's watching you do this, like right now, we don't have a lot of time to pull it apart, put it back together, pull it apart, put it back together, which you might do. There's been times where I build a rock garden and then walk away from it for a week and then come back with the idea that you might want to move a few rocks, because fresh eyes, you're seeing it differently sitting right there than I am seeing it looking from this direction. But so far what I'm seeing is, I'm pretty happy with that. All the rocks are tilted. I don't know if you can see, but all the rocks are tilted back just a tiny bit, like 5 degrees. Pile the sand high to begin with. It ensures that your construction will be high, right? That's the important thing. So now I'm going to find a rock to go here. And let's see what we got for that. I was showing Jay this morning. He said, "What's the perfect crevice garden rock?" Right? And basically what I answered was the opposite of the perfect crevice garden rock would be like a brick that has perfectly 90-degree angles and stuff like that. Whereas an excellent crevice rock is one that has lots of different options, lots of rounded. See, like this is, I grabbed this because I'm pretty sure it's gonna, that return is gonna go nicely with this one, right? But I could theoretically put it in this way if I want to sink it in really far. That actually might be an idea. Hold on. Just thought of an idea here. Yeah, that might work. So let's get it on there. So this kind of matches that a little bit, right? And I'm gonna need some more bits to go in. Here's the little system for ensuring that the soil doesn't slough out. Yeah, so it's not uncommon to kind of throw one of these together, decide you don't like it, take it apart and rebuild it again. It's kind of not a big deal because you can see it's not actually taking very long. It takes a lot longer to get the materials here and oh, can I have that one? Thank you. It takes a lot longer to get the materials here and set up than it is to actually build the things. Right? Okay, is that looking right? Okay. I'm gonna put a little guy in the front there now. This is probably going to be too big. Oh, not bad actually. But it might not be quite the right rock for me. See, one of my main confinements, if you're looking at like that. And then you can also, like, if something isn't, you can also like use the hammer to round corners off. Sometimes they'll build the garden and there'll be a few little points all around, so I'll just go around knocking the points off, and then it mellows the whole thing off. It mellows the whole thing out. So I'm gonna see if this rock works. See, I wouldn't do it this way because there's that underhang isn't really nice. That's not bad. But this way, you've got two nice returns going like that. Since this is the high side of this rock, I'm gonna put it in this way. Now the back. So what you guys can't see back here is that I've got one rock abutting another rock here. And from this angle, what you see is the join where they. Now this also has to be secure enough to be moved, right? So like, I gotta make sure some of these end rocks may have to be buried a little more deeply into the sand just to hold like this guy in place, right? Especially leaning back like that. But again, you'd be amazed how these things hold together. I'm not sure if that's the exact rock I want, but I'm gonna go nice and deep on this one too. Actually, you know what? I think I don't want it higher. So I actually want a bigger rock. So I want it to go deep, but also be way up here. So we got something. So, hey Jay, was this the one that we picked that had the? Oh no, it's not. That might have been that we talked about as an edge stone. Okay, so I'm gonna be very careful here because this hypertufa, it's strong, but I can't just pound a rock in like I would in the ground. So instead of pounding it in, I'm gonna dig it in. So this is a trough that's really meant to be viewed more from one side. It's not to say that you. Oh yeah, look at that. Awesome. Nice crevice right here. Crevices all through. And my last rock, I'm hoping is going to really kind of anchor this one in. I'm going to make it go really deep. Something kind of hefty. So you see how fast this goes? Like, how long have I been working on this? And this is talking while I'm doing it. I'm not even. So yeah, let's try that one. Let's try that one. Might be too big. I could put it in that way and really sink it down so that it, like I'm thinking almost more structure than anything else here. Do you think we can have one that's deep like that, but has a nicer top? Because that top's not super pretty. Okay. Look at that. That's really nice. So whatever you put in here, something that well, it's not, nothing's gonna hang down this side, but just to seeing that beautiful rock face is just a subtle change here. Okay. So you got to think about when you're building to keep it structurally sound too, right? So this is kind of, I think we're okay here.
Do you want us to set up a tent, pop-up tent for you?
What's the weather forecast supposed to do? It's not the piece that I'm looking for. So I have to stick with this slate. But I also don't want to see here, like this rock here that I put in is actually, once I put my side rocks on, it doesn't leave much of a planting pocket in here, right? So you got to think about that. I mean, that'll be fine for semper vivums, right?
Oh.
So
I'm at the
so
cashier,
always
and they
just
don't know what this is.
keep that in mind. Keep that in mind when you're thinking about where to plant. Like I might leave this as is. This is pretty secure. Like this is a rock I'm worried about because it's sunken so far in, right? All of these, like I say, once we get our support stones in between, it locks it all tightly together. So I'm just gonna see what I can do about finding some support stones and putting them in here. There's one. So you get some nice skinny, super skinny ones of those. You can mix. Yeah, that looks good. You can usually make even skinnier ones by splitting these. It's not splitting quite like it could, but nope. Anyway, you get the basic idea. Sometimes you can split these rocks and you can really make them quite skinny. Yeah, a little bit better. But yeah, you got some. That one may be good for. Actually, that one might be good for here because it actually is tall enough. Yeah, perfect. So this is the important reason to have big rocks and small rocks, because even if it's just a little piece like this, you can fill the crevices with a whole bunch of pieces if you don't have a nice, like this is kind of a ideal world kind of situation here. You don't always have a perfect piece that'll just fit right in there so nicely. So sometimes you have to build it up, right? Another thing about a steep vertical crevice like this is that you can build it up in such a way that you can actually have a plant growing out of the side of it. So you put a rock in the bottom, you have a little planting pocket there, you plant the plant, and then you put another rock on top. So it gives this illusion that it's just growing right out of a crack, basically. That's looking pretty good. Any skinny stuff? Is there any? Yeah, there's one to fill here. So yeah, so this will definitely be a planting pocket for something that's shallow rooted, tough as nails, just because. But as you go through here, like these will all be much more nice, deeper pockets, or they won't dry up as much. I assume these will be getting irrigated, will they, or just because being so sandy and everything like that. Certainly not a. It's gonna be a video of me trying to figure out this one last piece of the puzzle, right? Just gonna chuck some pieces in there to kind of, since that one piece didn't fit it perfectly, it's okay. We'll just do this. Little bits.
And you're doing that to basically dam up the sand?
To dam the sand, but also it locks the rocks together. Because every time you push a rock in, it pushes each one.
Yeah.
So when you get to the end, they're all just locked right in. You can walk over them. You can do whatever you want, and you're good. So this crevice here, I just conditions in this one here. So we'll just pop that in there. And then, of course, very important, the top dressing. So, especially for really sensitive plants that just despise having their foliage sitting on sitting on wet sand. That's when you go around the plant. And so this is top dressing that I make by just bombing the logging roads. I get buckets of stuff, and then I sift it into different sizes. So this is quite beautiful top dressing. So just gonna pop that around there. That Daphne looks like it could be a little happier, but given that it's Lawrence Croker, it'll probably survive because it's not that hard of one to grow. So that's rooted cutting. I do at home because I'm lucky enough to have this San Juan schist, it's called. I actually top dress with chunks of the schist, right? So what I'll do, if I can find a few kind of pieces like this that have broken off, it actually just do the same purpose when you think about it. It keeps the foliage of the plants off of the soil. Right? So now these, they don't necessarily have to be linear. They can just be chunky little bits of rock, but it gives a more artistic look. I'm just gonna quickly break one of these. Certainly be my guess, but we'd be here all day if we did the whole trough like this. You see how neat that looks? And you put those in like that. Like I say, it serves the purpose of keeping the roots off the soil. But because these rocks are all going in line with, if you do the whole garden looking like this, it really gives a very cool artistic impression. So I'm just putting even the tiniest little slivers in there. You can get as artsy as you want.
Thank you for having these hot sessions again.
Well, this is the thing. Once it's established, then you're kind of home free. You don't have to water, because think about how deep, if these have tap roots, right? Yeah. They're gonna shoot that tap root down like in the space of the first year, right? And even if you don't water, it's never gonna dry up way down at the bottom, right? So, so watering, like I say, the older the garden and the more established, the less you have to water, basically.